All right. Is this going through? Twitch, yes. YouTube, supposedly, yes. All right. I think we're live on Twitch. And live on YouTube. All right. Welcome to Code Hangout number 106, Ready Set Settings. Today, I'm going to do a little bit of a deep dive in how settings are loaded, because we've had some problems. I've done a release a couple of days ago, and there were a few issues that I've already fixed mostly, I believe, but maybe not 100%. And this edge of the screen is a bit cut off. I wonder if that's going to be annoying me too much. Let's see if I can fix that. Let me see. This should be display capture. If I unlock it, and then 1 second, we're doing this live. Transform. Hit it transform. And nope, it's not transformed. It's not transformed. It's probably clipped or cropped or something. Properties. No. Filters. Ah, here we go. So we have a right margin of 20. If I reduce this to 10, or even to 0, I think that's all right. I mean, we're losing a little bit of detail to like scroll bars and such, but I think that's okay. All right, I'm just gonna leave it like that. Oh, it's all good. All right, so basically the way settings are handled is a bit ad hoc, because let's see, issues with current settings. What are the issues we're having? Right. Basically, it tries to load async, and it tries to load at any time. In other words, it tries to load settings and features no matter what the state of the program is. And that means things aren't reliable, right? So, tries to load it in time. And let's see, new settings conflict with defaults and saved settings. Settings don't initialize properly. And maybe that's fixed, so let's say always, right? And settings may depend on each other. So there might be a setting that checks if another setting is set or not. And I've tried to make the system sort of robust, like, to these issues. And by trying to do that, I basically made it fragile, right? Now in the future, I want to redo all the startup stuff. And then I can clean it up all together, wrap up the settings into their own maybe little class or object or whatever. But for now, I just want to smoothen out and explicitly handle settings better. And I've done some pre-work on that, so I know now kind of settings are handled in fewer places and not directly accessed and things like that. So the important part I'm going to look at today is framework.init settings, which is this function, right? And basically, we need to figure out when does this happen, and then when do all the different features and so on get initialized, right? So most features, let's have a look at one. For example, something like, let's say mark solved digits, right? So most of the features wait for the app to be available and then execute add setting, right? Now, add setting should happen before init setting, and I think I've sort of made sure of that, more or less, but it's kind of not 100%. But I think right now it works well enough. So I think we can rely on that. So basically, we're creating the app, which is when that promise gets fired. We do a bunch of stuff which should initialize a bunch of settings, but we're also basically waiting for the browser to kind of load in all these files, right? So ideally, all of these files should be loaded before script starts executing, right? Where's script.js? Script.js. Here, right? So all the things that do settings, which are here, Wait, these are actually happening afterwards. Maybe they should happen before. 1 second. Why are these down here? Alright, that's something we can look into right away. So features... Alright, features is basically just a bits of code. And maybe we'll just get rid of this file as well. Maybe we'll clean this up. Because basically it's just... I moved some functions in here. In fact, just these two. And I think the only places these are being used is in the app settings file. So they probably should move in there. Or they should move into their own separate feature file. But it's not necessary, right? So if both of them are only being used inside app settings, then I think I'll just move these into app settings. Because, you know, they were supposed to be a feature, but I hadn't, at the time, I didn't have this whole structure yet. So we're just going to move them in here because there's a bunch of other ones in here as well. We're just going to move that in here for now. Right. And I'm going to do this on beta. Hey, Mark, how are you doing? But I'll probably have to hot patch this into production because I think this might be partially broken in production right now and it's affecting new users. So that's the important thing. That's part of the reason why it didn't show up in testing very well. All right, so if we're moving this in, it's a big diff, but it's basically a null change, right? It shouldn't really affect anything. If I save this. This takes forever to update. Here we go, right? So we're just adding this stuff in here. We're probably getting rid of the features file, and then we just don't reference it here. And I think that's all we got to do. Nope, we don't want to save it. We actually want to delete it. So we're going to delete the features file altogether. Because there's a bunch of other settings that are handled exactly the same way. And I think I just moved it because they were long functions, but it wasn't... These should go into their own feature files eventually, and then they should all get bundled up. And I think I'm just going to do a very quick load check. Yeah, it runs the same way. No big deal. And we're just going to commit that as a small change. But if I commit this now, it will be harder to bring this over into production. Yeah. Let's just do this. If all else fails, we'll just do a full second release. Because right now, beta and production are in sync. So let's just make this as a small commit. Wrap merge features.js into app settings.js. All right. Now, why does app settings happen after script.js? I'm kind of curious. I don't know why. And in fact, it doesn't actually execute any code. So where does this happen? It happens inside script.js. So this should really load before script.js. This doesn't make any sense that this happens afterwards. That goes there. And then app menu, I believe, is just the browser menu at the top. But it also doesn't execute any code. So it should be made available before script.js as well. I don't know why that's underneath here. All right. And they are all being loaded with defer. Okay. The only reason this didn't cause a problem is because script.js is waiting for DOM content loaded. All right. Just a quick loading test. Reorder loading. Script loading. All right. So this is really just to keep ourselves sane and make things a little bit easier to understand. But basically, when we're hitting this, all of these files are already executed. Each of these files should have executed a piece of code similar to this, waiting for this. Now, framework is loaded ahead of all of these guys. And I closed the file that I was just looking at. So framework should be loaded first. And we can probably... It's the burger menu. Top links, top bar. All right, let me see. I think all of app. All of app, yeah. So, framework is here, and that should execute first, right after these three, right? And I'm almost tempted. The only reason I'm not removing the first, because it would mean each of them waits for the other one to finish loading, and it could be an extra 200 milliseconds of just setup time for the connection, so it could like add a whole second to loading, which is so painful. But framework loads here, app gets created here, but I believe only inside DOM content loaded. Yeah, handle DOM content loaded here, right? And we're doing this here with a 10 millisecond. Okay. We're checking basically every 10 milliseconds here, and when ready state is complete, we're running this. So we're not actually using an event listener because I don't remember exactly the problems it caused, but it caused problems. All right, and it's a minimum of 10 milliseconds, but I guess that's okay, because I was gonna say we could check this before we execute. But it's fine like this. Let's not mess with too many things. I'm gonna replace all of this with a proper loader, so then we don't have these problems. Okay, back to init settings. Init settings happens inside app init, and then we hit init settings, right? And in fact, that's the first thing we're gonna do. We're gonna put this here, just so we know it's happening, right? And if I now execute this, we don't actually need the top here. We get init settings, and it gets called from init app.init, right? Okay, now what happens here is we have a couple of different states, right? We have a state when it's brand new, we have a state when settings are set, and then within that, obviously, we have the states where some settings are set, some aren't set, some partial settings might be deleted, we might be updating settings, and so on and so forth, right? And basically, what this algorithm here tries to do is basically at the end, next settings should contain what settings should be. But there's a caveat, right? So one of the issues is that I want, if no settings exist, I want the default settings to be available. So if setting C gets initialized and it accesses the value of setting D, and there's a default for setting D, it should receive the default value of setting D. But setting D might need to have its initialization code called, for example, something that modifies classes, right? A lot of the styling stuff modifies classes, and you know that code we don't want to call early, right? And there's where kind of the conflict starts sneaking in. So what I'm thinking of doing is basically load the defaults and the existing settings into our local settings list, settings database, whatever you want to call it. So they're available to other settings, but then before we execute the initialization of each setting, we're actually unsetting that specific setting. So that setting will set itself up, right? Initialize itself. Now that I'm saying that has the problem that if the setting has a default value, that might not get set correctly. So that was a theory I had, and now I'm realizing that's not going to work exactly, right? But basically the idea was, if I set the setting to null here, right? Set setting to null or to undefined, right? Then the set setting execution will run all the initializations that it's setting. You know, it sets classes, it triggers toggle setting events, and so on, that other settings might depend on, and so on and so forth. Now, what I could do is I could say if still undefined and has default set to default. But the issue with that is that, whoops, if the initialization code deliberately sets it to undefined, that might not work properly, right? Now, there are some other ways around it. I could set it to null instead of undefined, but then obviously all the code has to work with a setting being set to null, which it should. Or I could check for the set setting execution, because I've eliminated direct setting access now. So I could say, hey, has this setting actually been changed between this line and this? And if not, we'll just reset it to default, right? The other problem is that if it's not because there's basically two places where default can come in. A default value can come in here on init settings, or the setting code itself can provide its own default if the setting is undefined. And that's where kind of the conflict comes in, right? Because we want both to be possible. So the other option then is to say, okay, we want to be able to force all these triggers to execute, even if the setting is already set. So basically we could add a force argument here, right? And then wherever we're skipping out, where we're checking if the setting is different or not, which is, I believe, this check. Except, now that I'm thinking about it, right? So what does this do? It says if the value is different from the previous value, right? The current value in our settings list, in our that get setting returns, which would be the default, right? Or the initial value. Defaults might be the wrong term. Hey, Michael. Yeah, that's fine. I was just thinking of like two different values. So not initialized or specifically set to an unknown. But that option isn't going to work, right? But I believe this code is actually written in such a way that it doesn't really matter, because the only thing it doesn't do is if the value is not different from the previous value, then we just don't modify the value. And that code is basically unnecessary, because I could just modify the value anyways, because, you know, if the value is undefined, deleting the value will set it to undefined, and if the value is the same value, setting it isn't really going to harm us. It's not like an expensive operation here. And this is a direct set of the underlying list of values, right? So this isn't gonna fire off any other secondary event handlers or anything. So probably we can actually get rid of that. So now set settings basically always works, because it was, even previously, it was already saving the settings, it was already firing all the events, even if the setting is being set to the same value, which isn't necessarily what we want, but, you know, we can probably live with it. I'm wondering if there's another way of preventing, or if no, I think the reason I left it this way is because I was running into problems, right? The only thing that's affected is that if the toggle setting event fires, the previous value, yeah, so that's the only thing. So toggle setting and the untoggle event pass the previous value through, and the underlying event handlers might then not react because they say, oh, the value hasn't changed. Which is a problem, because if we're initializing with the default value, the value has indeed changed, right? So what if the default values aren't being set here? Aren't being set initially. Okay, so that's the thing. I'm kind of running in a circle here. So the reason I'm setting up the default values initially is that if other settings are inspecting, if like setting B looks at setting C, and we have a default value for setting C, but setting C hasn't been loaded yet, we actually want to give the default value of setting C to setting B when it's inquiring, right? So during the initialization phase, the settings might inspect each other. And that's kind of the difficulty here, right? Let me think. I'm still tempted to just unset the setting at this point. But then next setting should be the initialized value, right? So what we could do is we could say if the setting is equal to next setting, we unset it here, and that would always force a full initialization and a change of value. That might actually be a way of doing it. All right, let me see. So, and then we don't need to distinguish if it's a default setting or a stored setting, because even a stored setting needs to be initialized, right? So kind of the first time we're setting a setting, no matter where it comes from, we're setting from undefined to moving to that setting, right? So let's do that check here. The thing is, I don't know if next settings here would include the default setting. Well, next settings, it's basically a merging of... Okay, so we're removing all the settings. F settings is our actual object that stores it. Then we're assigning all the defaults to it. Then we're assigning to next settings all these initial settings, including defaults and stored settings. And we're adding... No, this doesn't include stored settings. F settings at this point is blank, right? Then we're adding the stored settings. Now are we removing them? we're doing a bunch of stuff. So here we're adding in temporary settings from the query string, right? Then we're doing some cleaning up, and maybe this I can outsource. Maybe I can do this ahead of time. So just erase, because basically I was trying to change legacy settings and have a place to do that. So maybe that's one thing we can do. So we can say clean legacy setting or upgrade legacy settings, right? So here we can do any of these kind of operations. And I think upgrading legacy settings should happen on the raw stored settings. So we basically want to do, we want to do saved settings equals this, right? Then we want to basically run through them here. So, and currently it's only doing this for this selection setting, right? So if next setting selection equals undefined, then we're setting it to cage, which is basically setting it to a default value. And if these exist, then it's getting set to any of these other ones. Which probably could be done a little bit. Could it be done? Because I think it's literally just looping through three things, and I'm actually using 3 lines to do it. So basically what this does is if saved settings selection light equals true, then selection equals light. That's basically what this is doing, right? Times 3. And maybe we can change this from saved settings to, or just settings. And we can just do light, dark, and cage. And since we're initializing it to cage, we don't actually need to check for cage, right? And this should be like that. And this should be like that. I'm just cleaning up the code because part of the problem is that it is a little bit obscure and not well built. So if selection equals undefined. Yeah. So if it is not undefined, then we're not going to look at the legacy settings. But we want to remove legacy settings either way, right? So those should always be deleted. So we delete selection dark, selection light, and selection cage. And in the future, this will also potentially work for other settings, right? And then after all this is said and done, we're just going to save them back. So f.set data. Let's just make sure we're going to use the right syntax here. And that's just going to be settings, right? And this is just kind of purely working on the saved stuff. It doesn't affect what's in this object. So we want to run it somewhere independently. So basically here, we probably want to run it right after we're clearing, as we're initializing, before we're loading anything from local, right? So we want to do this right here, clear settings, and then before load defaults, we're gonna do f.upgrade legacy settings. Upgrade legacy settings. And that gets rid of this bit of obscure code here. Right? Now this is, yeah, this should really be in the framework. But this will wait for the kind of initialization structure framework thing that I'm going to build in the future. Let's put that also into a function just to make it a little bit easier. Let me see where this comes from. The problem is it's got to set the temporary settings. Settings name, and the values come from here. So if I make a function, something like get query settings, something like that, and then instead of integrating it into next settings and temp settings directly, I just return these extracted settings. So we'll do let settings equals, and I pressed F10, which I didn't mean to. No. So we'll create a new settings object. We're looping through the query string here, like that. If key match settings, let settings name, replace setting, replace color. Oh god. Replace color with really? That's how I did it? That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't. Oh my god. Setting name. Setting color. Oh, whenever the word color, I'm injecting hues into them. But didn't I get rid of that? I think I went the other way around. I think settings now don't have color, the word color in them. I have to be a bit careful here. Let's look at a settings object. Actually, let's just look at the raw data. Sorry, that's a bit small. Framework.settings. So let's see. Multicolor. I guess I haven't really changed those yet. That's a bit dangerous. That's a little dangerous. I'm gonna leave it in for now for compatibility reasons, but in the future I'm gonna clean that up. All right. Here we're gonna assign these. All right, and I'm just gonna shorten these. So we have the value, and we have the key. Right. Oh wait, no. Yeah, we already have key and val here, so let's not mess that around. Settings value true.includes val.to lowercase. All right, and then settings.push. Yeah, so now instead of doing this, we're gonna return settings from here. Right. And let me see if in the Discord I can find something that has the letter setting dash in it as part of the URL. Unfortunately, it's removing the minus sign from the search. I don't know if Discord lets me search for that. Apparently not. If I put a question mark in front of it, or an ampersand, does not work. Apparently Discord search does not like letters. Mark, do you have a URL with temporary settings? A puzzle with temporary settings in the URL? It must exist somewhere. Let me see. If I search something like that. Oh god, even Google, like Google. I want this exact sequence of letters. Can we have this accurately? No. Logic masters. Or wait, I can search in URL, I believe. in URL setting conflict checker. I don't actually know. Wait a second. Conflict checker. What's the name for the conflict checker? Conflict checker like that. Oh, come on, Google. Tetris Sudoku. That sounds right. Here we go. All right. So this is what it looks like. Is that Sudoku? All right. Okay, so at least we can use this to test how the initialization code sees that. So then the question is, at which point do we need it? Let's put this in the same place here. Get query settings. If I execute that, we'll get that conflict checker false. And if I do this, conflict checker true. All right. So what we can do then is kind of use this function to get basically what this needs and then integrate them, right? So we want to basically do this. Let's output what these look like. And let's output what these look like. And then down here, what we want to do is we want to push object.keys of this one after the other like that. And we want to merge these into next settings. So object.assign next settings and then these. And I believe that should do the trick. Oop, or maybe not. Temp settings. Oh, f.temp settings. All right. And f.temp settings and f.temp settings. Here we go. So temp settings is hide colors, and now it's hide colors and conflict checker. And next settings, we need to... Yeah, here was conflict checker on, and now it's conflict checker true. Both of which I think are valid. Yeah, I was kind of looking just for like a function that generally has it. Anyway, so that should replace this bit of code in a slightly more elegant way, but it's probably easier to refactor this in the future as well. So we have that in a function. Oh, and we probably want to cache this. Let query settings equals boom. And then execute this only once. Like that. Okay. Deprecated settings. Ah, there's another round of deprecated settings. Wait. Remove deprecated settings. I think that was left over from before. Upgrade deprecated settings. Okay. And then... And these come... So, of all the settings that get loaded in, we have the defaults, we have the stored settings, and we have the query string settings. So those are the three sources of settings, right? And we'll probably want to do that here. Merge temp query string settings. URL settings. All right. And then finally, what does this do? We are, if our keys are, well, the keys need to be strings by necessity, I believe. No, okay. So settings options is basically settings that have some kind of configuration with them. Not all settings do, right? Some settings are literally just CSS classes, and they don't actually need to be configured in any way. So what do we do here? We are checking that. So settings options. Let's have a look what this kind of object looks like. So this is kind of all the different things that go into the settings menu, and in the future that will also be improved. It's not just the settings menu. It's kind of anyway, not relevant today. So we're checking. We're turning this into settings name. Okay, so I guess if I do this and replace this with framework, it should give me all the names of settings in this settings options thing that are not the empty string, which is basically what we're filtering out here. Okay. Yeah, so basically we're turning it all to names, some of which might be undefined. So there are settings in there like a button in the settings menu, right, that doesn't actually have a setting associated with it, or something where the item is the only thing we need, like a link, you know. And maybe I'm gonna rename this. Okay, 1 second. Then I'm adding in the defaults, and we might as well add in not just the defaults, but all the settings that we've loaded so far. So defaults and loaded settings. And then using new set to just make it unique. And then we're removing all the settings that aren't in this list. Now that is a piece of code I'm not certain about, right? So this is the list of settings that are in the defaults that are stored and that have configuration. So which settings would it remove? So right now, because we're not including the stored, so this would remove settings from the stored settings that aren't in the defaults or in the configuration. So this is really a way of just removing legacy settings. Do I want to do this at this stage? It seems a little messy. I think in the future, right now I'll probably leave it in, and maybe I'll put in a function to clean it up a bit. But in the future, I might literally just have a strict JSON specification of all settings that this version of the app understands. It is actually, it's not as trivial as that, because the idea is that settings can be loaded in from the outside. So people in the future might add extensions that add their own settings that the system doesn't actually know about, right? So that's I mean, at that point, the settings opts object should contain that information. And settings opts is added where? Add setting, yeah. Doing add setting. Huh. Alright. Alright, how do I wrap this up? Currency. Yeah, and I need to rename these variables. Otherwise, it shouldn't take me this long to understand what's going on here. So instead of current settings, I'll change this to known settings. Right. And then this concat, I can add right here. So now after this, after these steps, this is a list of known settings, right? And this syntax to make a unique list, man, is there array.unique? No? There's no built-in array.unique. That would make so much sense, let's be honest. Come on. All right. Because normally what I do is I kind of wrap it up here. But I guess making it, you know, make it this 2 steps, might maybe a slightly bit more readable. So f trim unknown settings. Next settings. or let's just call it settings, right? Then we'll kind of do this. So known settings is this. We filter it, we make it unique, right? And then for each of the settings here, we're filtering them by known settings, and then we delete all the ones that are known. And then after this settings object will be cleansed of these unknown settings, and then we just return it. Right. So then we can just do this. Next settings equals, or actually, I think we don't even need the return value, right? Because we're directly manipulating this here. So we can just do this. Trim unknown settings. Trim unknown settings. So then I don't have to mentally parse these lines of code, what they might do every time we're looking at this stuff. All right. And then at this point, we're setting the settings class for each of these settings. And I think this is also being set in set settings, right? Somewhere. I think. Let's see. Here. Wait a second. Where else? This should be happening somewhere else. Toggle setting class, okay. Toggle setting class. And okay, guys. And handle settings change fires here. No, it's assigned here. Oh, that only triggers if the setting is changed in the settings dialog. All right, this I don't like, because it means if a setting is changed programmatically, this doesn't actually fire. Okay, so that's a problem as well. I'm surprised this hasn't bit me harder yet. So basically, changing a setting does a whole bunch of stuff, right? It changes the value that's stored. It saves the settings. It changes a class on the body. So every setting has a class on the body. So this is, to make it very easy to use in style sheets and so on. And then it fires a toggle setting event, and it fires on toggle if the setting has it. So all of these things get fired. So this, let's see, if we do this and this, and then do JSON.stringify name and val. So this should not fire right now because it's on startup. It doesn't fire, huh? Default's not defined. 5247. Trim unknown settings. Oh, trim unknown settings needs to know the default settings. Please. Trim unknown settings. Trim unknown settings. We need to pass the defaults in. Trim unknown settings. Settings. Defaults. All right. So toggle setting class happens. And that's the thing, right? Because settings are already doing things according to other things. So here a setting might fire, its own thing, and it fires toggle setting class internally. Now, why couldn't I just use toggle setting class here? Like, why does this fire separately? And how do these algorithms differ? So if value is string, we're setting this. Okay. And it's getting its setting value from here. So why didn't I just use that here? RE setting. Filter class body class list dot filter class name. So here it's removing all of them, and then it's setting them back in. because I feel like I can just replace this with this. Next settings for each key. True. Next settings key, because it was string. So instead of this, I feel like I should be able to just execute f.toggle settings class key and then f next settings key as value. And I'm really just touching the classes here. I'm not doing anything else. And the same here. I'm only touching the classes here. Maybe... Oh man, I have a vague memory of why I executed this manually here. Or maybe at the time I was just in a hurry and I couldn't figure it out and I just rewrote the code and did the thing that I knew needed doing. Let's see. So for example, if we change dark mode, for example, or if we just say setting dark mode equals 1, then it will have toggled the class. Auto check dark mode true. If I remove it, will it? Because it shouldn't have stored it. Yeah, it should be a temp setting. Okay, so that seems to work. So we can actually do this here. That's nice. Don't know why that code was there. But we shouldn't have to do this. It should be fired from here as well. Now, if it's getting fired from here, we don't also want to fire it from there. And I have a feeling that I might have tried to change this in the past, and there's a reason it's this way. So now messing with it is potentially gonna just cause me hassle. But it feels wrong that we're doing this in different places, you know? So let's see. So when we're setting a setting, we're updating the value here. We're triggering a throttle save change, and I think I'm gonna put that down here. I think it was here in case there's some exception happening in these. But I think logically this makes more sense. Then we're looking for the settings option to check for this setting being available as having options. Now I think the toggle setting trigger, we still want to fire. And I'm guessing this one we only want to fire if they're different. I'm not sure. We'll see. We'll see. I'm wondering if I'm gonna be running into problems here, but we'll see. We'll see. If we can't find a setting option, then we can't do any of this, of course. Here it's sorting out the initialization of the settings options. Val settings name. Yeah, and then here we're reloading it because this code might have changed it. Okay. All right. And then the class change should happen at the very end. Or here after toggle setting. No, before toggle setting. All right. So that should then be name and val here. And now I think we'll have the problem of this executing twice on certain settings, right? Or breaking. Name val. So settings name. 1 second. Toggle setting class, set setting. Okay. I'm guessing we're gonna have to output set setting here, which is gonna be spammy because it's gonna be happening a lot more. So toggle set setting, import export colors undefined. So that's a bit annoying because that is not the name of the setting. That is the import export colors. That is kind of wrong, isn't it? That shouldn't be the name of a setting. How did that come about? Name, setting name. Content. This should be content. Why would that be the name? Now the problem is if I change... No, wait, this shouldn't have a name. Because this is not a setting that gets toggled, right? This is one of those things where it's literally... It's just a button, right? So if we look at settings... it's a bit of a mess right now. Under import-export, these are just buttons. They're not actually associated with settings that get changed. So this just shouldn't have a name here. And I don't know why it has. And let's have a look at the other ones as well. So let's say... import-export color palette. Yeah, and then if we look at... features save... settings save... it shouldn't have a name associated with these things, right? It does have a name here, though, and man, and I remember there was a reason why I did that. Even though there's no setting that we can toggle. And I'm not even sure if this setting is being used here or not. Setting save. It's added as a name, which is okay, because it's not required to be unique. Ooh, I hope I'm not digging in too deep here and causing myself future problems. I mean, I could give it a name, an arbitrary name, just to be on the safe side right now. Right? Except no, because it is associated with the color setting, but it's not about color setting, right? So unless I give it a unique, different name, no. I need to be able to do that, to add items to the settings menu that aren't associated directly with the settings. So let's continue with this part. All right, let's hide this again because it's too spammy otherwise. All right, so these are getting toggled. Now the problem here is they might get toggled too many times. So let's say if I go to visual toggle, yeah, so this gets toggled twice now. So now that means I don't actually want to do that there anymore. So this we don't actually want. Right. And if I toggle 5, 4, 2 value no. So we need to initialize it with an empty object now. Like that. And now we should be able to toggle something like this. Oh no, it's... God damn it, it still needs to fire. Ah, but wait. It should still fire. Ah, why is it not firing now? Alright, let's see. Let's get this back in, because set setting should get set when that gets toggled. And that then should trigger the update to the classes. Okay. Oh, because... Oh, I'm an idiot. Okay, because this handler is literally what does the setting. Ah, whatever. Here, set setting. There we go. All right. Now, the problem I'm spotting here is... Ah, no. Okay, because this needed to happen before set setting here. Because we needed to have access to the new value already. But now it's happening inside set setting. It should always have the right value. Sorry if this is a little confusing, but that's probably the reason why there's still bugs in it. Because it is complex and confusing. Alright, so that still seems to work. So if we look at, I believe it's either under advanced or experimental. If I select something here and then go change this. Yeah, so that should trigger. And that is dependent, I believe, on a class change. Yes. Okay. So we can take that out of there. Right. We don't need this anymore either. Now. Right? Because on startup, we're setting the setting, and that's when this gets triggered correctly. So we can completely get rid of that. So that gets rid of a bunch of code there. So I think we're almost there, having sort of unwormed this a little bit. And I think the one thing that I want to do now is, or there's two things I want to do. There's one issue here is where we're not executing set setting when there's no options name. In fact, okay. So the problem with this is right now, this will not fire set setting on anything that doesn't have a settings option associated with it. Which isn't necessarily what we want, right? So basically, for example, if a setting has a default value, we don't want to wait for settings options to exist for that setting. We still want to be able to set that setting. So what we really want is we want to first add these to next settings. Right. So, and then we want to fire this off for all the settings. So we're going to go for each here separately first. And then we're going to check if type ops name is equal to string. And then we can say if yeah, so if, because this might have undefined in it, right? No, wait a second, what do I want to do here? Do I want to trigger settings that aren't set in any way, that don't have an initial value? Yes, because their initialization code might actually set an initial value, right? So we do want to set undefined from here. So if this is undefined, we still want to execute the set setting to undefined initially. I think that's something we want to do, because the init code that gets triggered here might actually set a different value, right? And that's why we can't skip any of these, even if the values are the same, because the value might actually be different. And that's actually one thing I don't like. So in the future, I might actually have the initialization as a separate step. Like initialize all the settings first and then execute set setting on each one. Because set setting... should init happen before or after set setting? That's the question. Because set setting, all it does, it's just assigning the value, right? Which this might change. But we do need the value as well. It's a little tricky, and that's, again, that's the reason why we still have bugs. All right. So I guess it makes sense for those to be undefined and still execute through this initialization code. Yeah, so we should just... Yeah, okay. So if I do something like this, if I output next settings here, but I'm actually outputting the keys. So this will give me a certain number of keys, and then this will give me a different number of keys. And what if I simply say next settings ops.name equals itself. So if it's undefined, it should now exist but be undefined. So the number of keys should actually change in that event, I believe, if I'm correct about this. In fact, it does. It goes from 20 to 23. And the reason for that is, I'd like to understand this, right? So we have the defaults, we have the saved settings, but now if I refresh again, these should all be saved, right? All right, let's do this. JSON.stringify JSON.parse. So we're gonna actually duplicate these here, and we're just gonna do .keys here. So I'm just gonna do this to have a better. So keys, we have 20, and they look like this. Afterwards, we have 43 keys, and they still look like this. And the reason for that is that I'm setting them to undefined, and undefined actually will cause a delete here. Okay. All right, but it will still execute on toggles and trigger toggle setting, right? So if I say console.warn, okay, so in a way, this is exactly what I was hoping for, actually. Name val prev val, right? And I do this. We get a bunch of undefines, but we get a ton of these, right? And if I remove this piece of code, then these triggers will be fewer. Do they look fewer? Maybe not. Toggle setting. Because there should only be... subname equals string. Ah, wait a second. Am I barking up the wrong tree? Yeah, because this doesn't... Okay. I am barking up the wrong tree. So this is a superset of this, potentially, unless... Okay, so the whole point is not... Yeah, it still gets executed if we don't have values in fsettings ops. But if there's an initial value that doesn't exist in fsettings ops, and we can simulate that by actually changing the default settings, right? So we have some default settings, and we have here secret setting is no, right? So if we have a secret setting no here, then that shouldn't show up in that list. So we have 21 settings here, right? But toggle setting, secret setting should not happen. And I don't see it here. Toggle setting, there's no secret setting. While if we do it with this algorithm in place, there should be... Is there? There should be a secret setting here, right? Unless I miss it. No. Next settings. Secret setting, it's right here. Next setting, secret setting equals no. Oh yeah, okay. Because we're still using this algorithm, right? But now, if instead of doing this, we loop through all the next settings, the 43 whatevers here, the 44 keys. So instead of doing this, we'll do next settings dot for each. And I don't know what's faster. Is it object dot whatever entries? Object dot entries, right? Or can I just do array dot entries? Array dot entries. One, two, three. Yeah, okay. So I should be able to do entries dot for each, right? And then it should just be key val. And then I should just be able to output these like that. Entries for each. Oh, it wants more braces. Like that. Next setting dot entries. Okay, maybe that doesn't work. Yeah, the syntax here, why I can't like get keys directly off an object, I don't understand. But anyway, yeah. And then this should give us even the secret setting here, and we should be able to loop through all of these. And we should also be able to do something like nope. Dot length. And we do dot entries. Like that. Hey Shelby, how are you doing? It's a bit of a rough technical stream today, but it needs to be done because the release is out, and I don't want people to have issues. All right, keys 21. But if I delete settings from here and refresh, and I hope I did this in my incognito window, yes, we should have 15. Yes. And then 44. And ultimately, we should be executing, you know, secret setting in here somewhere. No, we should log it out. Yes. Now, if I don't have this code here, then the bottom one shouldn't have, you know, it shouldn't be 44 here, and so on and so forth. Secret setting, no. It's still getting logged out. Did I not save this? 1440, yeah. Secret setting is still being logged out. Because we're looping over next setting, but we're not. It wouldn't get logged out if we loop over settings ops here. Hey. Okay, so with this piece of code, next settings now should be a strict superset, and we should just loop through this one, and then we can just execute these. And does this already exclude any settings ops that don't have? Yes, because we've done that here. All right. And by assigning it to itself, it just gives us a bunch of undefines for the other ones, right? So we go through here, we get a bunch of undefines, but that's plenty for executing our handlers and so on. This is all JavaScript. All right, so we can do this here. Right, we can probably do this a little bit more compact. No. It's just gonna make it hard to understand for other programmers. We don't want that. Okay, so I can now just do this in here, and it'll just be key val. And we don't need that anymore. Like that. And that should initialize everything. Okay. Now, can get rid of these. Trim unknown settings. And then we'll just, what shall we call this? Actually, we should merge these in earlier, shouldn't we? So let's see. What are our initials? So we have defaults, load settings from data, and then we have merge query string settings temp. I hate that here. Okay, and then we have that. This can go here. No, that needs to be here. Trim unknown settings. That's something we want to be doing before or after as settings ops. We probably want to do that at the very end, right? We want to do that as the last step. And so then before that, we want to merge in these. I wonder if I can just do this somehow. Because I could basically convert this to entries and back. And use that as our initial empty kind of object. Let me think. And just use the values undefined. And then the values get assigned from other objects. So basically, if I do something like framework dot settings opt, right, like that, and I'll do object dot entries. No, if I do if I do map name to name, right, that should just get us a list of names with an undefined in the middle. And if I do object dot from entries, I don't think it'll like that. But if I do this, it'll do this, right? And all of these will be undefined, but there will also be an undefined down here. Is there an easy way of filtering that out? We'd have to filter it first, which is a bit sad. Probably barking up the wrong tree here, aren't I? Just keep it simple, Because I can obviously do dot filter like this. Whoops. Type of name, new string. Dot map. Something like that. That should give us an initial object with all these set to undefined. That could be our first thing that we add in here. And I think, yeah, okay, so get configured settings. So these are all the settings that have some kind of configuration, right? And we'll just do this basically. Boop. 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 And we could probably do this. Or we can probably just do this, right? We can just have configured settings, and then we'll have so merge configured settings, merge defaults. So that's these two. Merge saved data. So that's just that. That's all next settings, right? No. I'm making a mistake. No, wait. We wanted some of these in settings. No, we want all of these in settings as well. Yeah, I'm mixing some things up here because we had two lists of settings. We had the settings that we wanted to make available to other settings while they're being initialized. Now I'm trying to think. Let me save this here for a second because we might still use this. And I've been down this path and I've gone back and forth and back and forth and back and forth because there's one thing I'm ignoring here. Yeah, this is fine. One thing I'm ignoring here is that defaults get merged into the actual current settings, and then the rest gets added afterwards. But I think I want these saved values also part of the settings, actually. So I think what I've just thought of doing here, this will actually work. And we don't even care about next settings here, right? So if I get rid of all of this, and maybe the exception here being the query string settings, because we don't want to save those. Although, temp settings should have prevent this, right? So temp settings, yeah, these are excluded from saving. So the only thing is, if I do it like that, is that if a temp setting is a default value and isn't currently stored, it will not store the default value. But that is fine. I don't actually need that. The only problem is that if you change the temp setting, then it will still not be stored. But we might, that's probably a different thing. That's probably already a problem right now. Like if I change setting here, so if I disable dark mode here, and then open this over here with dark mode not on, on off. Yeah, you see, it's not saving that. Now, if I delete these and refresh, and then refresh this, yeah, so it does save the dark mode setting here. I'm not sure why. Let me see. So as we're saving settings, and we probably want to warn here so we get the thing. And I think I can get rid of the toggle setting. Toggle setting. Find toggle set. Toggle setting. So as we're saving a setting, I want to check what the temp settings are. So object key settings and ftemp settings. So if I go in here, delete this and refresh, framework is not defined because I probably missed a comma here somewhere or a brace or something. Next settings has already been declared. 505. 505. 505. Const next setting. Oh. Yeah. All right. Can't access settings before initialization. Can't access settings before initialization. Save settings. Settings. Delete this. Refresh. Boom. Save settings. Hide colors conflict dark mode. So then we should have save data. Like output the keys that are actually being saved. It should not contain dark mode. Except I'm guessing it does because it does seem to get saved. I don't see it here. So if I look at this now, dark mode. So this doesn't look like it has dark mode saved. And this is the same domain, right? Now here's dark mode. So I'm guessing the local application data is handled differently here. One second. Why is no data being saved here? Okay. Refresh. So this looks like it's not saving dark mode. I don't see dark mode in here. Now this doesn't have dark mode in the URL. So if I refresh this, why are we in dark mode? And my nose is itching. Excuse me. Oh, it's still itching. I'm gonna have to sneeze again, I think. Hate this feeling. All right, dark mode isn't being saved. Is it being initialized? No. Excuse me. So if I look at this and I scroll down here, do we see dark mode? Dark mode. No. But dark mode is clearly on. So if we look at these classes... maybe that's a bug in the code we've just added for setting these classes. Oh, 1 second. 1 second here. Toggle class here. If type of value equals string, else I think if val is undefined, it still triggers this. That's probably what's happening here. Yeah. So, toggle setting class. So either we don't fire it if val is undefined, or if val is undefined, we don't add the class. I guess previously we didn't have undefined as a value there. So we'll probably want to do something like if val undefined return. Now I hope that doesn't break something else, because it never used to do this before, right? Okay, so that works now, and this works, and it doesn't save this. So if I go here, it still isn't saved. All right. So that's fixed. Save settings. Let's just take this out again. And then what was the part we were working on right now? Okay, toggle class setting. So here we're merging in defaults, we're merging in the configured settings, and we're merging in the safe data. And right now, every time set settings gets fired, all the triggers fire. That's something we potentially don't want. So here, it might make sense to actually erase that value ahead of setting it, just for the initialization. So the idea is basically here, we just raw set, and it's really not settings then. It's just f settings is the raw file. So can we use get settings here? Maybe we should just use get settings. Get settings should return, just raw return that object. Yeah. So we should just say, const settings equals f.get settings, right? And then instead of doing this, we'll do this. We'll do this. We don't need next settings now. This we still need to... Uh-oh. I still needed to do that, and I didn't save the... I had the code in the clipboard. God damn it. All right. So we don't need the defaults anymore. Loading settings from data. That's already being done here. And then we have the query string settings. We can get them here beforehand. We put them in here, and then we also add them here. This can now go up to here. Right. And the query string settings should override all the others. Ah, wait. And then this is this part. Ah, so we do have it here. From entries, just with undefined in there. Okay. All right. So merge configured settings, merge defaults, merge safe data. Because these will not have values, then we're adding in the defaults, then we're adding in the safe data, and finally we add in the query string temp settings. Then we're trimming out unknown settings at the end. And it's only using defaults. Does that make sense? We're using these. Yeah, this actually should only apply to the saved settings, I believe. Because it should really... I don't know if this is the right place to do the trimming. Because, for example, it'll ignore the query string settings as well. Yeah, I feel like this functionality... tell you what. Let's pull these out first. So const default set up. Configured settings equals this. Right? And then we can just replace that here, and then we don't really need these silly things, right? I'm gonna call these default settings. Verbosity wins. Whoops. In this case, at least, default settings. Right. Then const saved settings. Just so we have a label here. Then we don't have to do merge save data, right? And then query settings as well. Now, the unknown trimming only applies to the saved settings. So we can do that here. And we can probably we can do this here. So we can do these two first. So we're merging in the configured settings and the default settings into settings, not the saved settings. And settings at this point is blank, right? And then the unknown settings we're trimming are these saved, these from saved settings, right? And we can, since it returns these, we can do this. Right. And then we can assign these afterwards. And then it's only these couple lines of code. And there should be a lot more self-documenting. Okay. Then this part, do we need this anymore? No, because that's already been done up here now, right? Yeah, because these are initially set up as undefined, and then they get overwritten with these, which is basically the same effect as that code had, so we can get rid of that. All right, so now we're back to just running set settings, except the idea was that there's no more next settings, right? So we can say settings key equals undefined, and then we'll set it to what val, and that should be it. And then set setting at this point should, and trim unknown settings still, trim unknown settings. So trim unknown settings now gets the known settings. So these are known settings. So we can just pass these straight in. Ah, wait. Known settings. Do we need to defaults? See, we concated them, right? So this is the actual settings getting passed in. So known keys. Right. So the whole point was that we didn't need to duplicate all that code. So we're filtering all the known settings. And if it's not one of the known settings, we're deleting it. And that's our saved settings. So now they're cleansed of legacy settings, and now we're merging them in here. Then we're setting each value to undefined before we are assigning it to the actual value, which might be undefined again, in which case it's okay for the triggers not to fire. Now, currently we're still firing all triggers, but that's something that might change now. So, whoops. Nope. Let's save this one. Ah, and we broke it. It does no longer initialize the dark mode correctly. All right, so configured settings and default settings. So we have 41 configured settings. We have 14 default settings. And we can do JSON.parse, JSON.stringify, like that. Oop. Configured settings. So configured settings are these, but they're empty. Oh, they shouldn't be an empty object. They should not be an empty object. They should be an object where every element is undefined, which is not the same thing. But maybe it shows up as... Oh, why does it stringify like that? That is weird. Why does that stringify like that? That I did not expect. All right. It stringifies to an empty object, so I have to be a bit careful. It might somewhere along the line get lost. What about object.key? Object.key should work, right? Maybe that is the problem. Maybe one of these functions doesn't work the way I expect. I think it's this one, right? It's this area here. Yeah. So okay, that works. Default settings is 14. So far so good. And then at the end, we have settings here. All right. Why is this list so short? The undefined ones have been removed here. Oh yeah, because that's what set settings does. But dark mode should be set. And it's not. So let's find out. What happened to dark mode? Undefined. But dark mode shouldn't be undefined. So what if we do configured settings dark mode? Ah, wait, where are we adding the query settings? We're not adding them anywhere. That's what's happened. That's what's happened. All right. And there we go. We're back. We're back in business. And it should still not have been saved. Right. But if I change this to dark mode positive, I like to think of it. I think it's still in the experimental. Dark mode on. And then refresh this and refresh this. It's still saved correctly. Sweet. Or is it? Wait a second. Because set data, let's see. Set data. Get data. Where's save data? Where's save data? Save. Where is save? Get settings, save settings here. Temp settings are excluded. Is temp? Because we're fetching the current data first. So if it's a temp data, we're replacing it with the current data. Okay. If is temp and current key is not equal to undefined. Let me think. Is there a better thing I can do? If current data equals settings key. settings key. So if we do entries, settings, and then this would be val, right? And then instead of settings key, we can just use val, right? And current data, do we need current data really? If isTemp and current data is undefined, is not equals to undefined, current data key, save data key equals save data key. If, what are we doing here? If it is not a temp value, then we're assigning it to val, save data, which is empty. If it is a temp key, if isTemp and current data is undefined, we're assigning it to current data. If not isTemp. Now, if current data was undefined and we assign undefined here, so we can get rid of this clause, which would make this sometimes undefined. And then we can just do if save data equals undefined, then we can just delete it again. Like that. Because now this if else becomes a lot easier. So we can say save data equals, then we just say isTemp, which is this. If isTemp is true, then it's car data. Else it's val. Boom. All right. And we don't need that. We don't need any of that. And then at the very end, we just get rid of the undefineds. Which might not even matter because we just learned that if we stringify it, yeah, then the undefineds just drop out. So that makes this function actually quite a bit simpler. All right, let me just double check this. All right, so we're assigning to save data, which starts out empty. For each key of settings, if that key is in temp settings, we assign it the current data that we just loaded. Else, we are assigning it the value that's in the new settings. If that element then is undefined in the end, we just delete it. And then at the end, we're just saving it here. So that should still work the same way. Okay, so I think that's actually basically it. The one thing that I'm not considering right now is that this should enable me to get rid of some of the events inside set settings. And upgrade legacy settings is literally what the name of the function is. Clear settings. I'm very tempted to make this a function that I can just call. Instead of trim unknown settings, I'm wondering if I should wrap this into it as well. But this does the job. This does the job. Upgrade deprecated settings. Update legacy data. This should be upgrade legacy settings. Wait, upgrade legacy data. What the? Oh, we have this already. Data key val. Keys. Get item key. Now return. Set data key val equals to remove item key. Set data key val. I'm not entirely trying to remember what that was for. I don't want to touch it if I don't understand it. But it's probably something we don't need. Upgrade deprecated settings. Upgrade deprecated settings. Because set data, I believe, adds in a prefix. Make data key. While update legacy, local storage get item key, that pulls the key out of that. And then removes it. Yeah. We want to do that once when we initialize. Update legacy data. Yeah, let me change that to upgrade. Just so we don't mix our metaphors here. But I'm not going to touch that. Upgrade legacy data. Now our settings key. So that just does it for setting in the moment. Okay, so we don't need that. So clear settings is literally the only thing here. Now upgrade legacy settings. Is that something that should happen before or after? Upgrade legacy settings. Delete settings, set data. So that happens also on the save data. So we can actually do that here. Because that runs its own gets data and set data. And then this can actually happen here. And oh, yeah, that should be settings key. That I can now move into the function. So it doesn't dirty up our init settings function here. That's also const. We're not going to change that. We're adding this to temp settings, so that's kind of happening here. Then we're loading up configured settings and saved settings. Saved settings, we need these to trim the unknowns, right? Then we're adding the saved settings and the query settings. We should do these before, like this. We should probably do this down here because I don't think settings are used in any of these. So this is where we're starting with settings. First time we're actually touching them. So now all of the setting stuff actually happens in these couple of lines here. And this just prepares all the data. All right. All right. Let's get rid of some of this stuff. Save settings. Let's have a look. Changed a couple of things that we probably didn't need changing. Tiny little refactors and renames, but that's okay. I feel like I've at least put the effort in now to fully understand what's going on. And do it in a more clean fashion. All right, G426. Let's clean up these. Set settings. I'll need it for a minute here. Console.warn and settings. Let's go to that. F ups and equals add settings. Settings added after init. All right, set setting is the one that we care about. And that should be here. So, how my nose is itching. Sorry, guys, I'm not picking my nose, I promise. All right, so the question now is, can we avoid calling these? And can we detect if a setting actually changes or not? Ah, interesting. So this is getting executed more than once. Yeah, sometimes it's good to rename something just to find out if you're doing silly things elsewhere. All right. Ah, my nose. So set settings, undefined, undefined, undefined. So what do we care about here now? We want to see if setting is actually changing. So if doing this, because we gotta access settings directly here. So if val equals prev val, warn setting no change, like that. So that shouldn't happen, but it does. Now it could be that things get triggered twice. Oh, okay, no change undefined to undefined though. Which is interesting because these basically shouldn't need initialization. I don't know actually. Is initialization still gonna trigger? Yes, init should always trigger. So init should trigger. The value is still unset here. So the init call still happens. Settings opt fine. This settings opt fine call is I don't like. But it's the only way to make sure it always works, no matter what happens, how things get changed over time. But that's one of the things I want to change in the future. In the future, you have your settings registration, deregistration, and it'll set up some indexes and all this sort of stuff. But set settings shouldn't fire often. But there might be rogue code, let's say a solver that just fires set setting on every iteration of the solver and stuff like that. So that could be, you know, that find operation here could be relatively expensive. And should be relatively unnecessary as well. Yeah, we should just have an index for that, but we don't need that, strictly speaking. And then else, we're just gonna put that here. Set setting changed. Changed. So the question is, are they getting fired twice? Change, no change, no change, no change. So if there's no change, we don't need to run this at all. Except we do, because the delete, this delete might still have to apply if the value is undefined or not. So, but running this is always going to be safe anyway. So we're going to run that first. Init should also always run. Right. And it means this should actually happen after this. Because it should still be set to undefined here. But yeah, we might have to do it again, basically. If settings ops is not undefined. I wonder if it's easier to just default it to an empty object. Basically, I'm thinking if I can skip this on toggle call. Is it useful to skip it? Because really what we want to do is, we basically want to do this and val. Okay, let's do something different. Let's do this for a second here. Set settings on toggle. Right, let's get rid of these for a sec. See if on toggle gets called. So on toggle gets called a couple of times. Val and prev val, right? So on toggle gets called for these. And should only be called for these two, because these don't actually get toggled here. So if I add and val is not equal to prev val, prev val. So now it's only firing on toggle for these three, and they should actually fire on these three. All right. Okay. I'm going to shorten this because we're using it a lot and it makes everything chunky here. Okay, so that will sort out the untoggle here. I think that's a safe thing. Toggle setting class should also be safe, right? Because if we're defaulting to undefined and undefined has no class, this should always be safe to do. And probably also here. And then the question is, do we want to save it? The only reason we want to save it is if we're changing, like to delete the undefined key. And I don't think that's a big enough reason. I don't think that's important enough. So what we can do now is we can put all these three onto this, which means we can actually do an early exit. But even better is if we separate these two out, because this should always happen, right? No matter if the value is changed or not. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna merge these two. So if this is not equal to undefined, and it's not initialized and type of yada yada yada, then we do these three. And now val has potentially changed, right? And now we can say if after the initialization the value is the same as what we already have, then we can exit, right? Because let's say if the default is, you know, a value, but the initialization sets it, no, we want undefined, we actually don't need to trigger it, right? Because default hasn't actually activated yet. So we can actually return here, and then we need to add this unless I default it to an empty object. But we can get rid of this, right? So exit if value has not changed, and then we can trigger the rest of these. Now, except for toggle save settings, but toggle save throttle save settings, I think we can call early because it's throttling, right? Although we don't even need to, we don't even need to fire it. If there's no change, we don't need to fire it. We don't care, because even if initialization does something different, it's not something we need to save, right? At least I don't think so. The only case is where initialization does some upgrading, but if it's not being saved, and it's likely to get saved the moment something else fires, right? Even if it doesn't get saved, it's fine. It'll get saved the next time the app runs, right? So that should now reduce the work done in here. And if I did everything right and careful enough, it should all still work correctly. So if we delete settings here, refreshing this should have no dark mode, and refreshing this, yeah, so this should have dark mode, this should have no dark mode, and refreshing multiple times should have no difference there. Now if I change dark mode here, dark mode experimental, dark mode on, and then refresh, it should be saved. If I refresh it here, the question is, I think if dark mode is changed there, I don't know if I can override that from here. So if I refresh this now, yeah, you see dark mode will still be... So dark mode will still be in the temp settings. So the question is, do we want to override temp settings when it gets toggled explicitly? All right, so and the problem with that is we don't really have like a way of differentiating kind of a human initiated explicit toggle, right, from, you know, something mechanical that happens elsewhere. So if I change this, set setting dark mode is being set to false, right? But for example, I'm also using it for hide colors, and hide colors should always be temporary. Hey Greta, you there with Toby? I wish I could just live add you to the stream. We need to try that sometime, actually, if I can do a video call with you and then add that into the stream. Send a kiss to Toby. Oh wow, that was a couple minutes ago. Maybe you're still in the stream. Okay, so the problem is there's two kinds of temporary settings. There's temporary settings, and there's permanent temporary settings, which is a bit annoying. But basically, I wanted hide colors to basically never be saved. One issue I have right now is that adding a setting to the URL basically marks it in the same way. So if you then want to toggle that setting, it basically ignores that toggle. It will never save that. You'd have to basically change to a different URL to be able to toggle that setting. So there's a couple of ways around it. One way around it would be to literally change the URL. The other way around it would be to let it toggle the temporary setting. So if you're setting the setting to off or whatever, it just wipes out the temp flag, which might interfere with hide colors somehow. One issue with hide colors actually is that somebody might permanently change it, like because it just doesn't save it. It doesn't reset it to a different value. Probably not something I want to tackle right now, but definitely something I need to look at again in the future. So temp settings, get query settings here, to do handle manual update of such settings, change URL or change temp status. To do ensure this is always temp. So there are a couple of to-do items in here, but I think this should be an update. Now the problem is this is actually, I think this is too many changes to qualify as a patch, as a hotfix. And it's, so I have a worry. I have a worry that I want to hotfix production if it's currently not saving settings. But after the last patch I didn't get any more feedback that that's still occurring. So that might have already been fixed. So all of this is potentially just a refactor, rather than actual change of how anything works. So I think it might be smarter to actually push this to beta for now. And if it seems to work just perfectly fine, then maybe do a micro update sooner. I want to do updates more frequently. I don't want to stop doing updates while I'm finishing the release of the mobile app. But maybe, you know, no major features, so I can maybe do them more quickly, like at a regular, like every other week or something, with just bug fixes or minor, you know, super minor changes, you know. Superficial changes, that kind of thing. But I think I'm kind of happy with this, so I'm actually going to do this as a new minor version. I'm going to bump the minor version number here, and that's going to end up in here, which means I have to manually change the patch number back to 0. All right. And let's close these two. Yeah, so we have this change. We have these updates. Oh, the secret setting. We definitely want to get rid of the secret setting. That was just for testing. My nose itches. And mostly just a change to framework. And I probably want to actually call it a refactor. Refactor framework.init settings, because I don't have a confirmation that right now there's actually an ongoing issue that is in need of fixing. And do I have a puzzle I can, whoops, we don't want that. Do I have a puzzle already that I can use for testing? Round the houses by Tallcat. No, there are connects themselves in greater form of their connected loop that must pass through every cage exactly once. Cage shows are given as a sum of the digits in the loop in each cage. I think this is a CTC puzzle. Why are the row column numbers showing here? Ooh, that's weird. Row column on. Like, yeah, let's have another look at what it actually looks like when we're starting with blank settings, because that's the other issue I have, that defaults weren't loading correctly. So I go here, and I do this one without any query string. Okay, so it's at least it's showing this, because the other problem was that, you know, my support stuff wasn't showing. And by default, send to is off, show plain sugar on, off, off. And I think I changed that to kind of do the default handling differently, but it's a little bit funky. All right, and I think there was a 9x9 puzzle that Bremster has done, and I'm going to pop that open quickly and, you know, watch it on Bremster's channel, because he's actually going to play it with a commentary and all that. But I'm going to use it for a quick test before we upload here. So we want to run this on localhost. We want to have the console open, because that is how I fly here. And yeah, I'm just going to run this through this puzzle as a quick test. My nose, tip of my nose is itching. It is terrible. But, you know, check out Bremster's video if you want to see more about this Bremster. It's just youtube.com/Bremster, I believe. Bremster. That's his chat. Actually, let me just pop open the link, because I saw this on the 9x9's chat. Bremster Puzzles is the name of his channel, and I'm just going to post the link in the chat. So that's the link if you want to check it out. And I'm just going to try to solve, because Bremsters are usually better within my reach of solving in a reasonable amount of time. So let's try that. So along thermos, digits must... oh, yeah. Standard thermo... Digits and cages must sum the corner. Digits may not recur. Standard killer rules. And self-server black dot have a 1-to-2 ratio. Okay, so that's standard crop key. Yeah, that's big enough for the stream, I believe. And row columns are visible again. So that's an indication that there's a problem. So if I disable this and then refresh here. Okay, so they're off now. I must have refreshed something else. All right. My tendency sometimes is to fill in all the crop keys, but let's see what else we can find. We have 2 big cages with 8s and 9s in there. So there can't be an 8 in here. Is there any obvious digits excluded by these 4, 3, and 6s? Like this can't be a 3, 6. Neither can this. 1, 2, 4, 8. Now this can't have an 8 in it. But that's not super helpful. This seems suspiciously long. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But this can't be a 9. So it's basically the same length. So 6, 7, 8, 9. 5, 6, 7, 8. 4, 5, 6, 7. 3, 4, 6. 2, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this is not going to be actually like that, because we need to fit a bunch of digits on here. So like this can't be a 9, so the only place a 9 can go... I should have looked at... Oh, why didn't I look at this before? Super obvious, right? Where does the 9 go? Now, where does the 8 go? Here or here? Don't know obviously where. The 1 has to go in the center, right? The 2 has to go here. Now the 3 can't go here, so 3 has to go in one of these. Alright. It's getting slightly less obvious. This can't be an 8, because then this 8, 9 wouldn't have a value. Oops. 6, 5. No 5 here. Again, this can't be an 8. This can't be a 6, because this can't be a 5. Why can't... Oh, because of the 5 here. Alright. This can't be a 7, no 6, no 5 here. So we now have a 2, 3 pair. So that's not forced to be a 4, 5, 6. Not a 6. This can't be a 4, so this can't be an 8. That's a 5, 6, 7. And now we have an 8, 9 pair here and here, interestingly enough. So now the 8 has... Ah, no, the 8 can still be here. 6 and 8, huh? 8 can't be here, though. 6 can't be here. So that's a 6, actually. Alright, alright. This also can't be a 3 or a 6. This can't be a 4, so that can't be an 8. And 5 here. 4 here. And 9s. 9 here. 6s. 6 here. Can this be a 3, 6? Yes, because there could be a 3 here. Any other limitations we've hit? Like, neither of these can be a 2, 4. So they need to have a 1. Ah, wait. Okay, that's a 1, 2, 4 triple. So we know this is 3, 7. 3, 6, 7, right? This can't be a 7. So it's a 3, 6 pair. Oh, and that's already given. There we go. Alright. That can be a 6. Here we don't have the same situation though. Alright. 3 on here. So the largest, this can be a 7, 6, 5, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It can't actually be a 5. 2, 4, 5, 6. Can't be a 6. That can't be a 4 then. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. No 6, 7. 6, 7, 8. 6, 7, 4. Can this be an 8? No. And then 2, 3, 4. Alright. 1, 2, 3, 4. This was a 2, that'd be a 3, 4, and that'd be the 1. Okay, that still works. 3, 4, that still works. 8, 9. Largest, this can be a 7, 5, because it can't be a 6, 4, can't be a 4. So 7, 5, 3, 1, 2. This can't be a 3 even. So 1, 2, 5, 7. All right. And then makes this an 8. Nope. 8, I said. This is a 7. No 8 here. Got a 2 here. So this can't have a 2 in it. 1, 2, 3, 7. So 4, 5. 5, 6, 8, 9, huh? And then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Nope. 6, 7, 4, 5. Okay. 5s. Down here. 5s. 5. 5. 5. Alright. 3s. 3s. Can't have a 1 on it. What do we know about 1s here? Go in here. Go in here. Ah, so this is a 4. 5 here. 4, 5, not here. And pair. An awkward situation here. 9 goes here. 1 goes here. 1 goes here. What do we have? 1, 2, 3. 3's missing, so that's a 3, 6. Okay. This gets us a 3, 6 here, and then the remaining ones are 1, 2, 4, and 8. The 8 isn't here, and that's a oh, wait, no. 1, 2, 4, and 9. Just made a mistake there. Well, the 9 isn't here, so it's got to be here. Which means we have a 4 and an 8 here. And that's 8, 9, 8, 9, 8, 4. I think that might resolve all those 8, 9 pairs. No 8 here. It's an 8 here. 8 here. 4 here. Is that all the 8s? I believe so. All the 9s. Not quite. Then we're missing an 8 somewhere. Same place, huh? 1, 2, 3. That's the 4. 1, 2 pair here. 1, 2, 4. Okay, and then this would be the 1. The 1 that I wanted. Alright. 3, 2, 5, 4. We're missing a 7 out of this row. And then here we're missing 3, 6, and 7. So 3, 6 must be on here, and the 3 can't be here. And that's the 7. All right, and then down here we're missing 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. Not 8. All right, so that's 4, so that's 2 or 8, and it's not an 8 again. All right, we're almost done now. 1, 2, 1, 4. Can't be an 8, so it's gotta be a 2, 3. Gotta be a 6 or 7, and it's a 7 because there's 6 in the column. And let's be a 6. All right, 8 minutes. Well, that worked smoothly enough, but of course playing a puzzle, unfortunately, is not a good test of the setting system. So that's something I'm gonna have to test, just paying attention if my settings are loading and saving and all that. Hey, Too Busy to Play, how are you doing? Welcome on the Twitch stream. Too busy to play, that sounds like you have a terrible problem. You're just catching me on the tail end. I'm literally just about to sign off. So I've done my final test. And I'm gonna deploy this one. I think I've just committed the code. Yes. So this is gonna get deployed. And I just need to deploy the beta here. Deploy beta. And I'm gonna deploy it here as well. And that's it for today. Thank you very much for hanging out. I am full steam ahead now to finish off the mobile. So the mobile versions of the app and the Steam version. I think I'm going to do the Steam one first because it's the easiest one to test. I'm going to update it to the current state with all these latest changes, the latest release. And then I have to test the hell out of it, make sure everything is working. So that's going to be maybe something I'll be doing also on the streams. And, you know, looking forward to that. I might do a short sale, maybe the summer sale or something like that, of the apps before the update. And then after the update, I might have to increase the prices a little bit because, you know, it's not really hacking it. And of course, there's always the free version on the web, so it's not like people are missing out or anything like that. And obviously, everybody who's already purchased will get the updates. Ah, that's good. Sudoku's party playing. It's exercise, right? Mental exercise. All right. In the meantime, you know, you can find me on Patreon under Sven Codes. You can hopefully join my YouTube channel as a subscriber and all that sort of thing. And that's it for today. Thank you very much for hanging out. Take care. Let's see if I can get that. And that's it for today's stream. Bye, Too Busy to Play, and have fun with Sudoku. Take care.